Freedom exists only for those who understand what truly imprisons them. Are you truly free? Raise your hand if you've ever felt trapped by your circumstances. Now raise your hand if you've ever blamed those circumstances for your lack of progress. The most dangerous prison is the one with invisible walls. Walls we've built ourselves through years of wrong thinking and poor choices. What you'll learn today will challenge everything you believe about freedom and success. Your life changes the moment you realize that freedom isn't something you find. It's something you create through understanding fundamental truths that most people never grasp. I was 26 years old, broke, in debt, and wondering how I'd gotten there despite working hard. The apartment was small, the furniture borrowed, and my excuses were many. The economy, I'd say. My background, I'd claim. The opportunities just aren't there, I'd insist. Then something happened that altered everything. A conversation that lasted less than an hour but changed my life's trajectory forever. An older, successful businessman asked me a question I'll never forget. Who is responsible for where you are right now? I launched into my familiar list of reasons, all pointing everywhere but at myself. He listened patiently, then said something that hit me like a thunderbolt. Your life will never change until you accept total responsibility for everything in it. I argued. I defended. I resisted. But walking home that night, those words kept echoing. For the first time, I considered a terrifying possibility. What if I was the problem? What if I was also the solution? The next morning, I stood before the mirror and spoke the hardest words I'd ever said. I am responsible, not the economy, not my background, not my boss or the opportunities. Me. That single shift in thinking, from blaming to owning, marked the beginning of my freedom, and it will mark the beginning of yours too. Freedom starts with this truth. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control what you do about it. Your response determines your reality. Have you noticed how some people turn devastation into opportunity, while others turn opportunity into devastation? Same events, different responses, dramatically different outcomes. Consider two employees laid off from the same company. One spends months bitter, blaming the company, the economy, their bad luck. The other sees it as a release from a job that wasn't fulfilling anyway, and uses the severance to start a small business they'd been dreaming about. 5 years later, one is still struggling to recover. The other is thriving with a growing enterprise. What separated them? Not the circumstance. They faced identical situations. The difference was their response to that circumstance. This isn't positive thinking. It's factual thinking. It's understanding the mechanics of life and success rather than being victimized by them. Your freedom begins with this fundamental shift. Stop asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what can I do about it? The first question makes you a victim. The second makes you a creator. Now let's talk about choice. The most powerful tool you possess, yet probably the most underutilized. Every day you make hundreds of choices. What to eat, what to say, how to spend your time, what thoughts to entertain. Most of these choices seem insignificant in the moment, but compound them over time, and they create your life. The average person makes these choices unconsciously, reactively, based on habit, convenience, or immediate gratification, and then they wonder why their life doesn't change. Your life is nothing but the sum total of your choices, up to this point. Want a different life? Make different choices. But here's what most motivational speakers won't tell you. Making better choices requires something that many people aren't willing to develop. Awareness followed by discipline. Awareness means understanding that there's a gap between stimulus and response, a small space where you can choose rather than react. When someone criticizes you, there's a moment, brief but real, where you can decide how to respond. When you feel the urge to procrastinate, there's a moment where you can choose productivity instead. Most people never recognize these moments of choice. They live reactively, wondering why life keeps producing the same results. But you're different. Starting today, you'll notice these moments. You'll expand them. You'll use them to create your freedom. Remember, this choices made repeatedly become habits. Habits practiced consistently become character. Character expressed daily becomes destiny. Small choices, over time, create your future. 5 minutes of reading daily versus 5 minutes of mindless activity. Saving $10 versus spending it impulsively. Speaking words of kindness versus criticism. These choices seem small, almost irrelevant in the moment, but compound them over years, and they create vastly different outcomes. I once asked a highly successful entrepreneur what his secret was. I expected something complex or revolutionary. His answer was deceptively simple. I just made slightly better decisions than most people, consistently for 30 years. That's it. No magic, no overnight success, just better choices, consistently made. Now let's address the great misconception about freedom. Most people think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, but that's not freedom. That's impulsiveness, and it leads to chaos and dependence. True freedom comes from self-mastery. It's the ability to do what you know you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not. It's being in control of yourself, rather than being controlled by your impulses, fears, or desires. The person who can't say no to the extra drink isn't free. The person who can't pull themselves away from distractions isn't free. The person who can't control their spending isn't free. They're enslaved to immediate gratification at the expense of long-term fulfillment. Are you truly free? Can you do the things you know you should, even when you don't feel like doing them? This brings us to the hardest truth about responsibility. It's all yours. No matter what happened in your past, your future is your responsibility now. Yes, you may have had disadvantages. Yes, you may have been treated unfairly. Yes, others may have contributed to your challenges. But the moment you use these realities as reasons why you can't move forward is the moment you surrender your power. Your past explains you. It doesn't limit you unless you let it. I know a woman who grew up in severe poverty with an abusive father and a mother who abandoned the family. Her early years were filled with hardship. Most of us can't imagine. She had every reason to fail, every excuse at her disposal, but she refused to be defined by what happened to her. Today, she's a successful business owner who helps others overcome their own difficult backgrounds. When I asked her how she did it, she said, "I realized that while I wasn't responsible for what happened to me as a child, I was responsible for what I did about it as an adult. The day I stopped blaming and started building was the day my new life began." That's the mindset of freedom. That's the mindset you must adopt. Now, some of you are thinking, but you don't understand my situation. You're right, I don't know your specific circumstances. But I know this. Whatever your situation, someone somewhere has overcome something similar or worse. The question isn't whether your challenges are real, they are. The question is whether you'll use them as reasons or overcome them with responses. Your circumstances are not your conclusion unless you decide they are. Let's talk about something few discuss, the responsibility of knowledge. Once you know something, you become responsible for applying it. Knowledge unapplied becomes a burden rather than a blessing. After today, you'll know the principles that create freedom and success. That knowledge makes you responsible for using it. You can no longer plead ignorance. That's both empowering and sobering. With knowledge comes responsibility. With responsibility comes the potential for change. With change comes freedom. But knowledge alone isn't enough. Information without application leads to frustration, not transformation. Have you ever met someone who has read every self-improvement book, attended every seminar, knows all the right things to say, but their life shows no evidence of this knowledge? They've accumulated information without application. They know but don't do. Don't let that be you. The measure of your knowledge isn't what you know. It's what you do with what you know. This brings us to wisdom, the practical application of knowledge. Wisdom isn't knowing what to do. It's doing what you know. Wisdom comes from experience, and experience often comes from bad decisions. You've made mistakes. We all have. The question is, have those mistakes made you bitter or better? Have they become reasons to quit or lessons to grow? The wisest people I know aren't those who've made the fewest mistakes. They're those who've learned the most from them. A mentor once told me, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. I've found that to be profoundly true. Some of my greatest lessons came from my biggest failures. Those lessons were painful but invaluable. When I lost my first business, I could have concluded that entrepreneurship wasn't for me. Instead, I asked, what did I miss? What must I learn? How can I do better next time? Those questions transformed a failure into education. That education laid the groundwork for later success. Your past failures aren't there to stop you. They're there to teach you. Extract the wisdom. Leave the wound behind. This mindset of responsibility, choice, and learning creates a foundation for freedom that nothing can shake. When you take full ownership of your life, you gain the power to change it. Consider this carefully. Everything you are experiencing right now is preparing you for something you'll need later. The challenges that seem to be holding you back are actually building your capacity for greater achievement. I'm not saying difficulties are pleasant. They're often painful and unwanted. but they're also opportunities for growth that comfort never provides. Strength develops under resistance, not ease. Character forms in the crucible of challenge, not comfort. The very struggles you wish would disappear are developing qualities within you that success will require. Are you resisting these challenges or learning from them? Are you asking why me, or what can I learn? Your answer determines whether you'll remain stuck or become stronger. Let me tell you about a principle I call the mirror and the window. When things go wrong, average people look out the window to find someone or something to blame. Exceptional people look in the mirror and ask, what could I have done differently? What can I do now? The window lookers stay stuck because they've placed the responsibility for their situation outside themselves. The mirror lookers grow because they've internalized that responsibility. Which are you, a window looker or a mirror looker? Your honest answer reveals whether you're on the path to freedom or still confined by circumstance. Now there's something important we need to address. The gap between knowing and doing. This gap frustrates more people than perhaps anything else. They know what they should do, but they don't do what they know. Closing this gap requires understanding a simple but profound truth. Motivation follows action, not the other way around. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. But that's backward. Action creates motivation, which creates more action, which creates more motivation. It's a virtuous cycle, but you must initiate it with action, not wait for feelings. Don't wait to feel like saving money. Save, and the motivation will follow. Don't wait to feel like exercising. Exercise, and the motivation will grow. Don't wait to feel confident. Act confidently, and confidence will develop. This is the actionable side of responsibility, doing what needs to be done regardless of how you feel about doing it. Freedom requires this level of self-mastery. Without it, you remain at the mercy of your changing emotions, which makes consistent progress impossible. Your past is set, but your future is waiting to be written. Who will write it? Your excuses or your actions? Your circumstances or your choices? Now that we understand personal responsibility is the foundation of freedom, let's build upon that foundation with another crucial truth. Success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. Most people spend their lives chasing success like a dog chasing its tail, running in circles, never catching what they're after. They focus on having without understanding the necessity of becoming. Here's the principle that changed everything for me. You don't get more until you become more. This simple truth explains why lottery winners often end up broke within 5 years. They got more without becoming more. They received wealth without developing the character to maintain it. And what you haven't earned, you typically can't keep. The same applies to relationships, health, career advancement, everything worthwhile. You attract what you are, not what you want. Think about this. Have you ever known someone who keeps experiencing the same problems with different people, different jobs, but the same conflicts, different locations, but the same dissatisfactions? That's because they keep bringing themselves to each new situation. Until they change, their results won't change. Success comes not from what you do occasionally, but from who you are consistently. This brings us to one of the most powerful analogies for understanding growth, the farm. A farmer understands what most people forget. There are seasons and processes that cannot be rushed. You can't plant seeds today and harvest tomorrow. You can't skip stages in the growth cycle and expect abundant results. The farm teaches us 4 critical lessons about success. First, you reap what you sow. If you plant corn, you get corn, not wheat, not rice, not tomatoes. Your results directly reflect your inputs. If you sow excellence, you'll reap excellence. If you sow mediocrity, you'll reap mediocrity. If you sow nothing, you'll reap nothing. How many people complain about their harvest while neglecting their planting? They want better relationships, but sow criticism instead of appreciation. They want financial security, but sow spending instead of saving. They want respect, but sow disrespect. The harvest always reveals the planting. What are you sowing today? In your work, in your relationships, in your mind, in your health. Whatever it is, that's exactly what you'll harvest later. The second farming lesson, you reap after you sow, not before. There's a gap between effort and reward that requires patience and faith. You don't get paid for planting. You get paid for harvesting. but you can't harvest what you haven't planted. Many quit right before their breakthrough because they can't endure this gap. They plant seeds of new habits, new skills, new relationships, but abandon them before seeing results. They say, it's not working, when the truth is, it hasn't had time to work yet. Every worthwhile achievement requires this season of invisible growth, the time when you're working hard with no apparent results. The oak tree grows underground for years before breaking through the surface. Your success follows the same pattern. Are you patient enough to keep sowing when the harvest seems distant? Or do you abandon your fields prematurely and wonder why success eludes you? The third farming principle: you reap more than you sow. One corn kernel produces a stalk with multiple ears, each containing hundreds of kernels. That's multiplication, not addition. This works positively and negatively. Small positive actions compound into massive positive results. Small negative actions compound into massive negative consequences. This is why seemingly minor habits, reading 10 pages daily, saving a small percentage of income, expressing gratitude consistently, create such profound changes over time. They're seeds that multiply. It's also why those harmless bad habits, those little compromises, those small neglects, create such devastation eventually. What begins as just this once becomes this is who I am, through repetition and compounding. The fourth farming lesson: you reap in a different season than you sow. There's winter, spring, summer, and fall. Each has its purpose. Each is necessary. Winter is preparation, study, planning, rest. Spring is planting, initiating, beginning, launching. Summer is cultivation, nurturing, developing, growing. Fall is harvesting, completing, achieving, receiving. Most people want to harvest in a season meant for planting. They want results when they should be focusing on effort, or they're planting when they should be preparing. They fight against the natural order rather than working with it. What season are you in right now? Are you working with that season or against it? Are you trying to harvest prematurely or delaying planting because you're afraid? Success requires understanding and respecting these seasons. Now notice something critical. The farmer doesn't control the weather, doesn't control the soil composition, doesn't control how fast the crops grow, but the farmer controls what to plant, when to plant it, how to nurture it, and when to harvest. That's the perfect metaphor for your life. You can't control everything: economic conditions, other people's actions, unexpected challenges, but you control your choices, your habits, your responses, your focus. Too many people obsess over what they can't control while neglecting what they can. They worry about the economy while ignoring their spending habits. They complain about their boss while neglecting to improve their skills. They're concerned about genetics while eating poorly and avoiding exercise. Freedom comes from focusing on your circle of influence rather than your circle of concern. What can you actually change? Start there. One of the most important principles I've learned is this: your income rarely exceeds your personal development. Want to increase your income? Increase your value. Develop skills that solve bigger problems for more people. Most people plateau in their careers because they plateau in their growth. They reach a certain level of competence and stop learning, stop improving, stop expanding. Then they wonder why their results stagnate. The marketplace pays for value, and value comes from solving problems. The bigger the problems you can solve, the more you're worth. To increase your worth, increase your ability to solve problems. This brings us to another crucial pattern. Everything valuable grows gradually. Wealth, relationships, wisdom, reputation, health, skills, they all require consistent investment over time. Understand this, and you'll never be seduced by get-rich-quick schemes or overnight success promises again. You'll recognize that sustainable success is always a marathon, never a sprint. Consider how trees grow. They don't grow 80 feet in a year and then never grow again. They grow a little each year, and those small annual growths compound over decades. Your success follows the same pattern. Small improvements, consistently made, lead to massive results over time. Knowing this liberates you from the tyranny of immediate results. You no longer need to see dramatic changes today or this week. You understand that consistency matters more than intensity. Reading one good book won't transform you. Reading one good book per month for 10 years absolutely will. One workout won't get you in shape. A reasonable exercise routine, maintained for years, will completely remake your body and health. The Japanese call this principle kaizen, continuous, incremental improvement. It's how they rebuilt their industrial base after World War II and became a global economic power, not through dramatic innovations, but through thousands of small improvements implemented consistently. Apply this principle to your life. Don't seek dramatic changes. Seek small improvements you can sustain. 1% better each day compounds to nearly 38 times better over a year. This perspective changes everything. Instead of being discouraged by how far you have to go, you can focus on making today slightly better than yesterday. That's always achievable. That's always sustainable. And over time, it's transformative. Now, what about the inevitable cycles of challenge and opportunity that everyone faces? How do you handle the downs as well as the ups? First, recognize that both challenges and opportunities are temporary. Neither lasts forever. Challenges pass if you persist through them. Opportunities pass if you don't seize them. Understanding this temporal nature helps you endure difficulties and act decisively when opportunities arise. Second, realize that challenges and opportunities often disguise themselves as each other. What looks like a problem today often becomes a blessing tomorrow. What seems like a golden opportunity can become a disaster if it's not aligned with your values and purpose. I once lost a job I desperately wanted to keep. It seemed like the worst thing that could happen at the time. 2 years later, I realized it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it forced me to start my own business, which became far more rewarding financially and personally than my job ever would have been. Was losing that job a challenge or an opportunity? It was both. Instead of cursing the obstacle, look for the opening it might create. When challenges come, and they will, here's a practical framework for handling them powerfully. First, accept reality as it is, not as you wish it were. Denial only prolongs your suffering and delays effective action. Look the challenge squarely in the face and acknowledge its reality. Second, take responsibility for your response. You may not have caused the situation, but you're responsible for how you handle it. No blaming, no excusing, no self-pity, just ownership. Third, evaluate what you can control and what you can't. Focus your energy exclusively on what you can influence. Ignore the rest. Fourth, identify the opportunity within the challenge. Every problem contains a potential benefit. Find it. Fifth, take action immediately. Even small actions create momentum and reduce anxiety. Don't wait until you have the perfect solution. Start with what you know now. Finally, maintain perspective. Ask, will this matter 5 years from now? Most challenges that seem overwhelming in the moment become insignificant with time. This framework transforms how you experience difficulties. Instead of being victimized by them, you use them as stepping stones to your next level of growth. Now, what about opportunities? How do you maximize them when they appear? First, prepare before they arrive. Opportunities favor the prepared. Develop skills, relationships, resources, and mindsets that make you ready when opportunities emerge. Second, learn to recognize them. Opportunities rarely announce themselves with flashing lights and fanfare. They often appear as problems to solve, questions to answer, needs to meet. Train yourself to see the potential in ordinary situations. Third, act promptly. Hesitation kills more opportunities than lack of ability does. When you see a genuine opportunity, move quickly and decisively. Fourth, persist through the inevitable obstacles. Every worthwhile opportunity comes packaged with problems. Those problems eliminate the uncommitted and leave the rewards for those who persist. Fifth, maximize the opportunity by giving it your very best effort. Don't just do enough to get by. Do enough to stand out. Excellence is noticed and rewarded. This strategy doesn't just help you with obvious opportunities. It creates opportunities where others see none. Throughout life, you'll experience recurring patterns in both challenges and opportunities. Recognizing these patterns gives you tremendous power because you can prepare for them before they occur. For example, every industry has cycles of expansion and contraction. Every relationship has periods of closeness and distance. Bodies have times of health and times of vulnerability. Markets rise and fall. These patterns repeat predictably. The wise person studies these patterns and positions themselves accordingly. They save during abundance to prepare for scarcity. They strengthen relationships during good times to sustain them through difficulties. They maintain health proactively rather than reacting to illness. This is strategic living, aligning your actions with life's natural rhythms rather than being surprised by them. It's like a surfer who studies wave patterns. They don't try to control the waves. They learn to read them and position themselves to ride them effectively. You can do the same with life's patterns. Life's patterns reveal themselves to those who study them. The seasons of planting and harvesting, the cycles of challenge and opportunity, the process of gradual growth. These aren't just metaphors. They're the operating system of achievement and fulfillment. But knowing these patterns isn't enough. Many people understand the principles of success, but remain stuck, unable to implement what they know. Why? Because they're trapped by internal barriers they've never identified or addressed. Let's confront the uncomfortable truth. The biggest obstacles to your freedom and success aren't external. They're internal. They're the self-sabotaging patterns you've developed, often unconsciously, that keep you imprisoned in mediocrity. These barriers are particularly dangerous because they operate below your conscious awareness. Like an iceberg, the visible portion, your results, is merely a symptom of the massive structure beneath the surface. Your thinking, your beliefs, your habits. The first step toward breaking free is naming these hidden jailers. Let's expose the most common ones. The first jailer: excuses. These seem harmless, even helpful at times. I'm too busy. I don't have enough money. I'm too old. I'm too young. The economy is bad. I don't have the right connections. Excuses provide immediate emotional comfort. They protect your ego. They absolve you of responsibility. But they also ensure you remain exactly where you are. Every excuse has the same message. You can't. And as long as you believe you can't, you won't. How many dreams have been buried in the graveyard of I can't? Because how many potential achievements have disappeared into the void of it's not my fault? That the truth. For every excuse you have, someone somewhere has overcome the same obstacle to achieve what you claim is impossible. Too old. Colonel Sanders started Kentucky Fried Chicken at 65. Vera Wang didn't begin designing clothes until she was 40. Ray Kroc began McDonald's at 52. No education. Many of the world's most successful entrepreneurs never finished college. Some never finished high school. No money. Most great fortunes began with little or no capital. The founders started with ideas, determination, and resourcefulness instead. Wrong background. People have risen from poverty, overcome disabilities, conquered discrimination, and transcended terrible childhoods to achieve extraordinary success. Whatever excuse you're using, someone has already proven it invalid. The question is, will you? The second jailer: procrastination. This isn't mere laziness. It's a complex psychological mechanism that trades long-term fulfillment for short-term comfort. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," you're making a profound statement. You're saying that your current comfort is more important than your future success. You're choosing the easy over the worthwhile. Procrastination is particularly insidious because it disguises itself as reasonable. I'll start the diet after the holidays. I'll begin saving once I get the raise. I'll have that difficult conversation when the timing is better. But here's what procrastination really costs. While you wait for the perfect time, life happens. Opportunities pass. Problems compound. Time, your most precious and limited resource, disappears forever. The perfect time is a myth. There is only now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel more motivated or when circumstances improve. Now. What have you been postponing that, if done consistently, would transform your life within a year? Your health, your finances, your relationships, your skills. Whatever it is, the cost of delay is far greater than the discomfort of action. Start today, even imperfectly, even small. The momentum you create will carry you forward. The third jailer: blame. This is perhaps the most seductive prison because it feels so justified. It's always someone else's fault. Your parents, your spouse, your boss, the government, the economy, society. Blame feels good momentarily because it preserves your self-image. It's not your inadequacy. It's their unfairness. It's not your choices. It's their limitations imposed on you. But blame is fool's gold. It glitters with the promise of relief, but contains no value. While it temporarily soothes your ego, it permanently damages your future because it places the control of your life in others' hands. As long as you're blaming, you're declaring yourself powerless. You're saying, my life can't improve until they change. And since you can't control others, you've sentenced yourself to permanent victimhood. The moment you stop blaming is the moment you reclaim your power. It's not about denying others' impact on your life. It's about focusing on your response rather than their actions. The fourth jailer, fear. Not the healthy fear that keeps you from walking into traffic, but the debilitating fear that keeps you from attempting anything significant. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, fear of looking foolish, fear of outgrowing your relationships. These fears keep more people stuck than all external obstacles combined. Fear itself isn't the problem. Everyone experiences fear when pushing beyond their comfort zone. The problem is letting fear make your decisions. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in the presence of fear. The successful aren't fearless. They've just developed the habit of doing what needs to be done, regardless of their feelings. What would you attempt if you knew you couldn't fail? Now, what if the real failure is never attempting that at all? The fifth jailer, perfectionism. This seems like a virtue, but it's actually a vice. Perfectionism says, unless it's flawless, it's worthless. This mentality keeps many from starting and prevents others from finishing. Perfectionism is often fear disguised as standards. It's not really about quality. It's about protection from criticism. If you never complete anything, you never face judgment. If you never launch, you never risk rejection. But nothing significant is ever perfect, especially at the beginning. The first draft is always rough. The first attempt is always awkward. The first version always needs improvement. Excellence comes not from perfection, but from iteration, from starting, evaluating, adjusting, and improving continuously. Give yourself permission to be imperfect. Focus on progress rather than perfection. Start before you feel ready. Ship before it feels done. Improve based on real feedback rather than imagined criticism. The sixth jailer, comparison. This mental habit steals both joy and motivation by constantly measuring yourself against others, whether real people or idealized versions you've created in your mind. Comparison comes in two equally destructive forms. Sometimes you compare yourself to those seemingly ahead of you, which breeds resentment, inadequacy, and despair. Other times you compare yourself to those seemingly behind you, which produces complacency, arrogance, and stagnation. Either way, comparison takes your focus off your own unique path and places it on irrelevant standards. It transforms the joy of growth into the stress of competition. The only useful comparison is between your present self and your past self. Are you improving? Are you growing? Are you becoming more than you were? That's the only standard that matters. Your journey is yours alone. Your challenges, advantages, timeline, and destination are unique to you. Comparing your path to others is like comparing apples to airplanes, meaningless and misleading. Now that we've identified these internal jailers, how do we break free from them? How do we overcome these deeply ingrained patterns of self-sabotage? The answer lies in understanding the difference between the mentality of success and the mentality of mediocrity. These mindsets operate on fundamentally different principles. The mediocre mind reacts. The successful mind initiates. The mediocre mind avoids pain. The successful mind accepts necessary pain for growth. The mediocre mind blames circumstances. The successful mind creates circumstances. The mediocre mind seeks comfort. The successful mind seeks growth. The mediocre mind asks, why me? The successful mind asks, what now? This difference isn't genetic or accidental. It's cultivated through conscious choice and consistent practice. You develop a success mentality the same way you develop physical strength, through regular exercise against resistance. Here's a practical framework for eliminating these negative patterns. First, identify the specific self-limiting pattern that's holding you back most right now. Don't try to change everything at once. Focus on the major barrier. Name it specifically. Second, recognize the triggers that activate this pattern. What situations, emotions, or thoughts typically precede your excuses? Procrastination, blame, fear, perfectionism, or comparison. Awareness of these triggers is the first step toward changing your response to them. Third, create a new response to each trigger. Develop a specific plan for what you'll do differently when the trigger occurs. Make this plan as concrete and simple as possible. When I feel overwhelmed about my financial situation, instead of blaming the economy, I will take 15 minutes to review my spending and identify one unnecessary expense to eliminate. Fourth, practice this new response consistently until it becomes automatic. Changing mental habits requires repetition, just like changing physical habits. Be patient with yourself during this process. You're rewiring neural pathways that may have been strengthening for decades. Fifth, celebrate progress rather than demanding perfection. Notice and acknowledge every successful implementation of your new pattern, no matter how small. The positive reinforcement will accelerate your transformation. This framework, applied consistently to each self-limiting pattern, will progressively free you from internal barriers that have restricted your growth and happiness. But breaking free from these mental prisons is only half the equation. True freedom requires replacing negative patterns with positive ones. The daily disciplines that create extraordinary results over time. These disciplines aren't complicated or mysterious. They're simple practices that, performed consistently, yield remarkable outcomes. Their power lies not in their difficulty, but in their consistency. The first discipline, purposeful goal setting. Not vague wishes or temporary resolutions, but clear, written goals with specific timelines and action plans. Goals provide direction for your energy. Without them, you're like a ship without a destination, movement without progress. With them, you focus your limited resources on what matters most. Effective goals share certain characteristics. They're specific rather than general. They're measurable rather than vague. They're yours rather than someone else's. They're challenging rather than comfortable. They're written rather than mental. They're time-bound rather than open-ended. Take 15 minutes right now to write down your 3 most important goals for the next year. Be specific. What exactly do you want to accomplish? By when? How will you measure success? What's your first action step toward each goal? This simple exercise, repeated quarterly, will provide more clarity and momentum than most people experience in a lifetime. The second discipline, continuous learning. The most successful people are perpetual students, constantly upgrading their knowledge, skills, and mindsets. In a rapidly changing world, what you know today will be insufficient tomorrow. The skills that got you here won't get you there. The insights that created your current success won't create your next level. Commit to reading at least 10 pages of a worthwhile book every day. That's about 15 minutes. This small habit, maintained over years, will put you in the top percentile of knowledge in your field. 1 book per month equals 12 books per year. 12 books per year for 10 years equals 120 books, more than most people read in a lifetime. What would happen to your career if you became an expert in your field? What would happen to your finances if you mastered money management? What would happen to your relationships if you studied communication and emotional intelligence? Knowledge compounds like money, but with greater returns and less risk. Invest in yourself daily. The third discipline, proactive health maintenance. Your body is the vehicle that carries your dreams. When it breaks down, everything else stalls. You know the basics: regular exercise, proper nutrition, adequate sleep, stress management. The challenge isn't information, it's implementation. Start small. 10 minutes of exercise is better than 0. 1 healthy meal is better than none. 7 hours of sleep is better than 5. 5 minutes of meditation is better than nothing. These small choices, made consistently, will transform your energy, mood, focus, and productivity. They'll extend not just the length of your life, but its quality. They'll improve not just your health, but your effectiveness in every other area. The fourth discipline, financial management. Money isn't everything, but it affects everything. Financial stress diminishes health, strains relationships, limits options, and restricts impact. The fundamentals haven't changed. Earn more than you spend. Save systematically. Invest wisely. Protect against catastrophe. Give generously. Start with awareness. Track every dollar for 1 month. Most people have no idea where their money goes, which makes improvement impossible. Once you know, you can make intentional choices rather than wondering why there's always too much month at the end of the money. Then implement the principle that has created more financial freedom than any other. Pay yourself first. Before bills, before expenses, before anything. Set aside at least 10% of your income for your future. This one habit, maintained over time, will revolutionize your financial life. The fifth discipline, relationship investment. Success without meaningful relationships is hollow achievement. What good is accomplishment if there's no one to share it with? Most people spend more time maintaining their cars than their key relationships. They assume love remains without attention. Connection sustains without effort. Trust endures without reinforcement. Then they wonder why relationships wither. Quality relationships require quality time, not leftover time, not distracted time, but focused, intentional investment. Schedule it just as you would any other priority. Protect it from the constant encroachment of urgency. Ask better questions. Listen without planning your response. Express appreciation specifically rather than generally. Create experiences rather than just sharing space. Forgive quickly. Laugh often. These simple practices will strengthen your relationship foundation and enhance every aspect of your life.